Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Timely Pursuits channel. That's right, we are back. I'm Azad.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome.
And we're here to deliver this casual and informative, opinionated and superfluous show where we talk about horological happenings and what's going on with our watch collecting lives. So Kevin, we're back, episode 2. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much to everybody who's watched the videos. It's very much appreciated. Things are going well. How are things with you?
Pretty well. It's been a busy week all round, especially trying to get the hang of doing all the editing of these videos. But it's great. The feedback that we've had so far for episode 1, very encouraging, and let's hope we can keep it up.
Yes, let's hope so. Very much so. Again, very much appreciated. Let's get these numbers up.
Absolutely. So Kevin, what are you wearing on your wrist today?
I've got on a limited edition collaboration between Oris and RedBar. They made 100 of these, and it's on a custom Jean Brissot Python strap, which I had made. It's beautiful, and I'm very happy to have one, and very proud to be one of 100 people to have one of these watches.
Fantastic. No, that looks great.
What about you?
So I'm wearing a Christopher Ward C1 Moonglow. After your horrible comments about moon phases last week, I thought, how can I get my own back? I'm going to wear the biggest moon phase that I own. The most superfluous watch that I have, because it has no markers, it has no Arabics, nothing. So if you're trying to tell the accurate time, forget it. But if you want to know the position of the moon, go. So that's what I'm wearing today.
It looks good, but it's not really for me. I mean, to be perfectly honest, that is probably one of the best moon phase watches around at the moment. And certainly for the value as well. They are, under £2,000 on the leather strap?
Yes, on the leather strap. That's right. On the bracelets, I think they're just above, but I think it's very good value, really, for what it is. Very good value.
Absolutely.
And this will give a bit of a hint as to what we'll be talking about a bit later on with Christopher Ward. So stay tuned.
Don't give it away just yet. Don't give it away.
So if you are new to this channel, do go back and look at the previous episode, especially as we did an interview with Kevin to introduce him to everybody. And for today's episode, we're going to be doing the same thing, except Kevin is going to be interviewing me.
Yes, I am. So I've known Azad for a couple of years now, and we've met at various watch events. I just wanted to know more about him, and I'm sure our viewers want to know more about you as well, Azad. So how did you get into horology?
It's a good question. I think I started quite young. I always remember having some kind of Casio on my wrist, especially in my kind of teens. As I kind of graduated into late teens, early 20s, I think I was wearing mostly kind of your quartz, Seikos, Citizens, I think even a Seconda here or there. So I always enjoyed watches, but never really thought about them as any kind of collection. And it was only really after I kind of graduated and started working, my first team leader, he was really into watches. He was kind of showing me some different watches online and so on. And that led me to purchase my first, I would say, serious watch for me, which was a Oris Skeleton Atelier watch. They still exist in some form, not the exact model, but we'll flash up some images of what that particular watch looks like. And it's still in my collection. I wore it for quite a while as I changed jobs and continued to work in a generally an office environment wearing a suit. So it kind of fitted that environment really well. But I felt that when I was out and about, it was far too dressy to wear with kind of jeans and a t-shirt. So I had to get something different. So I picked up a Tissot Quartz chronograph, something quite a lot more sporty, which served me very well. Although, to be honest, I don't really wear it very much anymore. I kind of get fed up with trying to change the batteries all the time. I do have a couple of quartz pieces in my collection, but it's certainly not something I enjoy as much as automatic watches. And then I think it was for one of my birthdays, my wife, bless her, she decided to buy me a watch box. That's a dangerous thing to do to somebody, because at the time, I think I only had 2 or 3 watches in the collection. And here I am presented with this 10-slot watch box. And I thought, okay, this is a bit of a challenge now. I have to Feel these, surely. And that started the kind of the
Yes.
journey. I think next up, I bought a Tag Heuer. It was the Mercedes SLR Mecha Quartz one, quite a big, chunky 47mm watch. I just really loved the way that was kind of displaying the chronograph functionality at the time. And then I think about a year later, I bought another Tag. It was a Monaco GP Carrera. So, Tag was definitely my introduction to horology, although they didn't really hang around in my collection for very long. And eventually I kind of moved on to other brands, other pieces as well. And now I'd say the collection spans many brands, from big brands to smaller brands to independent brands, even micro brands who I've really enjoyed learning more about and getting involved with those. And hopefully we'll try to feature more of those micro brands in the show in the future.
I'm sure we will. And what would you say your particular type or style of watch is for you? What do you gravitate to generally?
I'm somewhere between sort of sports watches and dress watches. I would say I started with dress watches with the Oris, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm very happy to really invest in a classy dress watch. Sports watches, especially the more dressy sports watches, I really enjoy as well. I do have a couple that are quite outlandish. I think that's normal as part of a healthy, diverse collection. So that's also part of it as well.
So why did you choose the Oris Atelier as your first watch?
I think it was the skeleton dial. It allowed me to really see the inner movements of the watch for the first time and really enjoy seeing how that worked and really showing the living nature of the movement running. Again, dressy piece. I think it fitted what I was going for at the time. So it kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me.
That's great. Oris is a good choice, definitely. One of my favourite brands. What are your other favourite brands?
I'd say Omega is one of the big brands in my collection. I've got quite a few Speedmasters, a couple of Seamasters as well, and a variety of those. And I think what I really like about the brand is not only the quality, the value that they offer as well for a lot of the watches, although we can, as we discussed in the last episode, that value maybe is eroding a little bit as prices have crept higher.
Okay.
But also I love the diverse range that they offer. There's still a strong design philosophy behind the brand. If you like dress watches, they have fantastic dress watches. If you want everyday watches, they have a selection of those that you can choose from. Or if you want something a little bit more sporty, something more complicated, they also have that to offer. The availability is generally there. They have a range of limited editions, of course, but generally speaking, I've loved dealing with the brand. The boutiques have treated me really well in the past. So that relationship has been strong and strengthened by how I've been treated.
Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, do you believe that relationships with brands is very important nowadays?
I think so. I think especially for collectors, we've moved beyond shopping online. I certainly, I will buy watches online and I have done many times. But having some kind of relationship with the brand is quite important. And maybe this is why I've tended to more recently look at some of the micro brands, being able to get to know some of the owners and talking to them about their design choices and what's coming up in the future. That's really helped kind of win me over in terms of my patronage in the support of these brands. So that I do think that's becoming increasingly more important. And, going back to Omega, they've really gone out of their way to host and look after their regular clients. And I think that's to be applauded at, unlike many of the other brands that simply don't.
Yes, we won't mention those.
Oh, we can do. I'm perfectly happy to.
I know. We're trying to be honest, but not too honest. Obviously, it depends on your relationship with the brands, so we won't burn any bridges. Thanks very much for your last answer, Azad. But I'd have to ask you, are there any regrets when you've bought watches?
Well, there's definitely been a few over the years. I don't think any serious collector can't honestly, hand on heart, say everything they've done has been the right thing to do. One that I can talk about was a purchase of a Frederic Constant world timer, This was a very early purchase in my kind of collecting journey, where I didn't really know much about the market. I didn't really know what was out there. And that's not to fault the Frederic Constant watch. It was a terrific watch, and I enjoyed it for a number of years. But as soon as I learned about other brands and the offerings that they had, I found myself more drawn to those. And there were two mistakes. One, not researching the market properly in knowing what's out there. And the second regret was letting that watch go too soon. And I'll explain why. That watch came on an incredibly stiff alligator strap with a pretty horrible deployment clasp at the time. It was shaped to show the Frederic Constant logo, but it was incredibly uncomfortable and sharp from the underside. So whenever I wore it, I always had that in the back of my mind that, I'm not really enjoying the experience as much as maybe I should do. I've invested quite a lot of, into this watch. And now suddenly I'm learning that there are other world timers out there that maybe I could have bought instead. So there was an element of regret in terms of the initial purchase, and then I decided to let it go. Later on, I learned more about straps and the changing of straps and the flexibility that you have in, if you don't like the way a clasp sits on your wrist, change it. If you don't like the way a strap fits on your wrist, change it. So perhaps I let that one go a little bit too soon. I think if I was to go through the same experience today, and I have done more recently in other watches that maybe we'll come and talk to at some point, simply change the strap or have a strap made for it to enjoy the watch to the fullest. So yeah, there's definitely been some regrets, absolutely.
Oh, sorry to hear about that. I mean, Frederic Constant is a very, very good brand. I do like them. I don't have any of their pieces, but, time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to point out that that was one of the very early watches that they had released as a world timer. The more recent ones are significantly better in terms of straps, and the bracelet, actually, the integrated bracelet design that they introduced, I think is fantastic. And who knows, maybe I'll add another one to my collection at some point in time in the future.
But obviously you've had a complete cycle. You started off where you started off with G-Shocks and Casios, analog watches and digital watches combined. So knowing all of this information at this present time, what advice would you give yourself right at the beginning during your watch collecting journey?
Very tough question to answer, but it's one that I've been thinking about quite a lot. I would say the first thing would be is don't be scared of buying secondhand or used watches. Be very mindful of the value that you're receiving from a purchase of a watch. So, in many instances, if you hunt around, you can find quite significant discounts when you're buying a new timepiece. Obviously, a used timepiece, especially if it's in excellent condition, can also save quite a lot of money as well. And look, funds are important, especially when you're young and you're starting out, because ultimately that is what holds you back being able to enjoy the hobby through purchases. The other thing I'd say is you don't always have to purchase absolutely everything. There are other ways to enjoy the hobby through maybe watching content, like the content that we're providing, of course, or going along to meetups. And certainly when I got into the hobby, probably the same for you, there weren't any meetups. That these kind of communities didn't really exist, not online or otherwise. And even if they did, they were quite hidden away in the deepest, darkest corners of the web. And so that made it quite difficult at the time. Whereas today, there are many more opportunities for people to get involved in the community, to see what other people own and what they enjoy. And really just the advice would be to be very open, because tastes will change. Be very deliberate in purchases, in the expansion of a collection, and try to enjoy what you have as well. And ultimately, if you find yourself no longer enjoying something or not reaching for it, don't be scared to move it on. There are lots of ways to refresh the collection, which I'm sure we'll save as a separate topic for a future episode.
Yes, I'm sure we will. So thank you very much, Azad, for giving us an insight into your watch collecting history and a bit more about yourself.
Thank you. Moving on to the news and new releases segment of the show. And I believe that, Kevin, you're kicking us off this time.
Yes, I am. First, I just want to say there was an event this week with the limited edition and RedBar London in London. They looked at the Lederer watches that I had on display. They are very high-end Swiss-made and Swiss-design watches. Beautiful in design, a bit large, 44mm, which is one of them. But yeah, they look fantastic. Seriously high-end. I just want to say thank you to Pietro, who is unfortunately not well at the moment. Hopefully we will see him soon. And RedBar London for organising the event.
Yeah, so just wanted to echo that, wishing Pietro a very speedy recovery. You know, our thoughts are with you and your family. Gave us a bit of a scare. Looking forward to having you back in London, in the UK, for future events.
Absolutely. And what else is on the news this week?
So this week, Christopher Ward released a new set of watches. They decided to revisit the Dune C63 models that were initially introduced a couple of years ago, and they've released a new generation. These are known as the Dune Aeolians, which is a name that means the waves created in sand. So you might remember over a year ago that Christopher Ward did a collaboration with Oracle Time and introduced a beautiful grey dial with blue circular luminescent accents with a wave textured pattern going through that dial. That was a very limited release, only available to Oracle Time readers, which I think a lot of people were lucky enough to even see at the British Watchmakers Alliance event last year. So Christopher Ward's, clever in terms of their marketing and commercial acumen, clearly decided, well, they have to release another version of these. So that's exactly what they've done. They've now released 8 new models using a new dial. Now, admittedly, they have tweaked the pattern of the dial itself, which is stamped, because they felt that some of the wave patterns were a little bit too harsh, a little bit too sharp in some of the new colorways that they've produced. So they just toned that down ever so slightly. So we've got 4 new baseline models in steel using the same old C63 light catcher case, which is one of my favorite cases from Christopher Ward, measuring in at 38mm in diameter, 11.9mm in case height, and a very compact 43.7mm in terms of the lug-to-lug. They come with the usual Bada style steel bracelet with an excellent micro adjust as well, or you can have them on a range of complementary leather straps as well. We won't go through them all in detail, but you'll be able to see them on screen. There is a blue, grey, cream or tan, and also green dials in the steel. They're also releasing 2 additional models in bronze with bronze bracelets, which in itself is quite rare. These are also coming with the Sellita SW200 movement. However, the bronze editions will be COSC certified. Again, just raising the status of those bronze pieces. And then finally, they have decided to release 2 additional GMT model. One, which is the cream and green dial edition. This was actually very similar to the previous Dune GMT that they had released. The only real difference here is they've decided to remove the trident from the seconds hands. That's the only real difference between that and the previous model, which I actually own. And then lastly, they've also released a blue dial version with also cream accents. So you can see there's a lot of warmth to these new releases. Kevin, what do you think of these?
They do seem quite nice. Obviously, I would like to see them in the metal before I make any firm conclusions. But yeah, on first viewing, looking at the CGIs and the press release, it looks fantastic. Yeah, it's going to be another big hit, and it's going to be another big year for Christopher Ward. But I'm sure, isn't there any further news on these Christopher Ward watches?
So the news is that I've decided to add a blue dial steel version to my collection. So we will do a full in-depth review of this watch, and we can then talk in more detail of the others. So clearly, if I've decided to order one, you know what my feelings are on these models. I have to say thank you to Christopher Ward, because they did invite me along to the preview event this week. So the footage you're seeing on screen is from that event. So we're very lucky to have that nice and early before most other people do. Should mention the price. For the steel models, it's going to be £760 on the leather strap or £915 on the stainless steel bracelet. For the bronze models, £985 on the leather strap or £1,290 on the bronze bracelets. And then finally for the GMTs, £1,005 for the leather strap and £1,160 for the steel bracelets. I think they represent really good value. You'll remember last week we talked about the RS65 Diver, which is essentially pretty much the same movement going into these, but these are being offered for pretty much half of the price. And I guess that's part of the model that Christopher Ward has, pricing these watches much more aggressively because essentially they don't really involve retailers and therefore their price costs are lower.
Absolutely. At face value, those price points are exceedingly good. I'm interested in having a look at the full bronze because that does seem incredible value. I'm comparing that in my head with the Tudor full bronze boutique only, and I think that's now just under £4,000, probably a bit less, between £3,500 and £4,000. So yes, comparing it to that, it's exceedingly good value. It really, really is. And I can't wait to see it in the metal.
So, Kevin, over to you. Next release.
I want to talk to you about a brand which isn't very well known in the UK, but it's massive in the Middle East and the Far East. And it's RADO. They've produced a new incarnation of the Diastar in 30 millimeters. It's been going for 60 years and it is a woman's piece because it is 30 mil. However, the colours they produced are absolutely stunning. It comes in glacier blue, turquoise, and dahlia. To me, it's just blue, green, and purple. But those are the marketing terms or marketing colours they've used. More importantly, RADO is renowned for doing rather interesting materials in their watches. So they've now come up with a material called Semeros, which is, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is comprised of 90% titanium and it's got 10% other materials, so I think stainless steel. And it makes it as strong as titanium, but lighter. I'm not sure how that works, but that's what they're saying. It's an interesting piece. So these three watches, which have just been released by RADO, come in at £1,400. To me, that is very, very good value again, and they come with an automatic movement. Azad, what do you think about these?
I think these are really good looking watches and I think they will sell really well. It's a shame that they're only available at 30 mil because if they were available at a larger size, you'd certainly get men involved and buying these as well. So I hope they will release larger sizes because that aesthetic of the 70s or even late 60s design could really do well.
I totally agree. It does remind me of the old Flightmaster cases, which Omega did back in the 80s and 90s. Got that aesthetic, and they were fantastic value at that time. And I do like the case shape as well.
The next new release comes from Tudor. They've just announced the new Black Bay Chrono in a Flamingo blue, or officially known as the Turquoise dial. Now, this was originally leaked from one of their brand ambassadors, Jay Cho, where the initial image that was out there looked a lot more mint. Would you agree, Kevin?
Totally agree. It definitely looks more mint than the colour they're calling it now, turquoise. Definitely not. Looks more mint.
Neither of us have seen this in person yet, so we'll reserve judgment until some real photos have come out. But it's interesting because my initial comment to you was, oh, well, if they've done mint, surely they're going to do some kind of baby blue or Tiffany blue at some point. And lo and behold, it's actually not mint. It is meant to be a bit blue. So they've done that. Now, in terms of the specs, this is exactly the same as the previous pink release, the panda releases, the inverse panda releases that they've done. It's a stainless steel case, 41 millimeter diameter, 22 millimeter lug width, 14.4 millimeter case thickness, still using the same in-house, well, of course, rather shared Kinesi movement that they've had before signature caliber MT5813. So really just a new dial color. Does this excite you, Kevin?
It does and it doesn't. Out of the two, the pink and this flamingo blue mint color, whatever it's called or whatever it turns out to be, I do still prefer the original pink. It's more vibrant, definitely. It's definitely more noticeable. However, with this particular product, the price point is just over £5,000, which is a lot of money for a Tudor nowadays. What do you think about the price? What else is out there for that sort of money as well?
I was thinking about this because they share their movements with Breitling. And at £5,000, it's a reasonable price for a pretty well-made sort of shared movement. It's not your kind of off-the-shelf Sleater or Valjuetta movement. But at the same time, there are cheaper alternatives out there. So that in itself is a bit challenging. For me, I guess my biggest disappointment is, well, I mean, it's literally just a new dial. There's nothing different here. The clasp is the same T-fit clasp, which in itself is actually very good. But beyond a new color, there's nothing to see here.
Yes, I agree. Next year, it will be another different color, probably purple or another vibrant color. I mean, yes, it's basically rinse and repeat until they've gone through all of the colors in the spectrum, in my opinion. Also, I mean, for value for money, looking at comparing this to something like a Longines, which is definitely cheaper, they're going from strength to strength as well. And I think basically that a Longines Chrono would be a better value than a Tudor at the moment. I'm sure they're going to sell loads of these anyway.
But I guess Tudor has the strong brand, right? It's got the cachet behind it, especially given all of these celebrities that they employ. I mean, at the end of the day, who wouldn't want a David Beckham watch on their
Yes,
wrist,
I know,
right?
but I mean, that's what you're paying for at the end of the day. I'm sure if they didn't have David Beckham or all of these other ambassadors, is Lady Gaga still an ambassador? She's not cheap. David Beckham's not cheap. I'm sure that adds X amount to the retail price, what you're paying for. But that's my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I do like Tudors. I mean, you can see it on my screen, but I don't own any of these chronos. And for me, the thing I don't like about them is they're incredibly slab-sided. Obviously, they're following the Black Bay range, but because of that, personally, I find the case not very attractive compared to what else is out there.
I'm sure, Tudor rubbing their hands and looking at their bank accounts every day because they will sell loads. And I'm not sure if they're going to be easy to get hold of. I know the pink ones weren't originally. Are they going to limit supply of the turquoise mint colour one as well to try and get the cachet of being a limited edition when it's not really a limited edition? There is that marketing tool, which I'm sure they're going to employ. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed our second episode of Timely Pursuits. Azad, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram under az.time, and you can also find my other YouTube channel, also aztime. And where can they find you, Kevin?
You can find me on Instagram on the Kevin_Roberts100. And don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and hit that bell button to get notified of when the next video will drop. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Don't forget to comment. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.